This is the Homefront Live, and today I am joined by Mike Brock, and Mike is the author of Notes from the Circus here on Substack. I hope you all will go over there and subscribe to him. He is coming to us from the City of Angels today, Los Angeles. Mike, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Reed.
You have dulcet tones there, Mike. So you are great on the microphone. So the reason why I asked you to join me today was that you said that you were looking for, quote, a revanchist Democrat. And I looked this up, and it says the core idea of revanchism centers on the idea of recovering territory that a nation or group has lost, usually through military defeat or political maneuvering. So tell us what that means.
Well, do you think that you live in a liberal order anymore? Is that? Is that?
I don't believe we live in a liberal, neoliberal, or neoconservative.
Well,
I don't know the order.
look, I believe that this country was founded on within a liberal conception of political values, classical liberal values. And I think we have come to a point in history where people are having our vice president was here in California, in Southern California, maybe something we should talk about, the Claremont Institute, talking about a post-liberal order. Look, I'm a small L liberal. I think that liberal values are what built this country. I think I still believe in them. I defend them. I believe that there's a lot to be critiqued in liberal politics. I think we've reached a point where we have to really think about the contours of power in our society, and these are conversations that liberals have to have, like, internally. But I'm not ready to give up on this idea of liberalism, and so yes, I think we need to, through political maneuvering, hopefully, and not into the first part of that definition. I think it's in the cards, though. Over the next 10 to 15 years in the Western world, that this could become more of a kinetic confrontation. I'm not saying I think that that's likely to happen,
right?
But you look at the contours of how things are progressing today, and yeah, we've lived through a collapse of liberal order, and I'd like to recapture it. I think we need a revanchist liberalism, an aggressive, muscular liberalism that stands up for its values, that is on the front foot against its ideological enemies, and can paint a picture, a positive vision for the future that brings people back to the liberal tent. That's what I mean by the need for a liberal revanchist faction. That was what I was aiming towards.
Sure, and let me go back for just a second to something you said about J.D. Vance being out at the Claremont Institute. So, guys, if we were in 1920s Germany, the Claremont Institute would be in Bavaria, right? Like, it would be somewhere nestled near Bayreuth or someplace on the Austrian border, right? It is and has been for many years I would say, Mike, a bastion of neo-fascist thought that is well out of line, even with what I used to consider myself as a Republican, right?
Those ideas are going mainstream now in this country. They're going mainstream in this country now.
Correct. And as I have said, and I said this, I think, on a Substack post earlier, so I commented on somebody. The thing that's scary about Vance, and I don't want to get too off on Vance for a second, is that he is a brilliant liar, right? He is really able to be who he needs to be when he needs to be it, depending on the audience. I just think back, almost a year ago to his debate, in the vice presidential debate, and how exceedingly normal, I say this as an observer, not a believer, how exceedingly normal he was able to make himself, right, in front of a country that had not really seen him, that didn't really know him. And I think that is something that we really need to watch out for. You mix that too, Mike, with he believes this stuff, right? And the people who are willing to bankroll him or have already bankrolled him to the tune of tens of millions of dollars and potentially hundreds of millions of dollars, the likes of which are a Peter Thiel or now an Elon Musk, right? He is, I think, the heir apparent to this when Trump goes. And so talking about the revanchism, the need to take territory, the need to be on the front foot, I think is really something, again, as an observer, it was second nature for us as Republicans, right, to
Yeah.
be on the front foot, to
Yeah.
fight. It and the liberal order can get to that footing, but it takes longer. And American history has taught us that,
I mean, we've seen
right?
it before, right? Yeah, I mean,
Right,
we've seen it, right? I mean, like, FDR could I mean, I would argue was sort of an example of that coming out
for
of,
sure.
um, I mean, I think that there's something to be said for the fact that we've been somewhere like this place before, not exactly the same cast of characters, not exactly the same political arrangement. But, in the late 19th century, I mean, America looked a lot like an oligarchy, right? We called it the Gilded Age. Politicians were owned, uh, and we were in a really bad place. I mean, it ultimately culminated, and we had the First World War, and then the Great Depression, and this led to a massive popular backlash, which led to the New Deal, and we went into the Second World War. um, in the middle of all of that, and came out the other side, and we entered this crazy golden age that ultimately culminated in the collapse of the Soviet Union, and this like crazy what we now this sometimes people call it this Fukuyaman moment, this end of history moment in the 1990s. That part of history was actually probably the aberrant part of history. We've never had anything like that in human history. This sort of this Pax Americana, as we called it. And so I think there's like a few things that we need to be really honest with ourselves, right? As small L liberals, right? And we should. I want to be very like inclusive about what I mean by that, right? I mean, you're a former like Republican. I also kind of hailed from the center right when I was younger. So my conception of liberalism is very broad. It encompassed a lot of Republican Democratic politics over the last 100 years. Some people call it the post-war liberal consensus. And I think that was a generally good project. I think it also had its contradictions. I think it was captured by special interests on both sides that has led to this disenchantment with politics, this disconnection with politics that people are feeling. And I think we have to take this all on board if we want to understand like why we're here and like how we're going to get out of it, right? Like these fascists are weaponizing real critiques, right? Even if they're not necessarily proportional to like to the moral salience that we should apply to them. Um, Liberalism does need to upgrade itself for the 21st century. We do need to take a look at this epistemic environment that we've created for ourselves with social media, engagement farming, the mass manipulation of the public through these platforms, and really think about like what that really means for the maintenance of democratic power in a liberal civilization. I am myself, I'm a technologist, former executive from Silicon Valley, so I've seen it like from both sides. I don't think everyone in Silicon Valley is literally a villain, but I do think they have become somewhat addicted to uh, the economic arrangements that they have built for themselves, and they don't know how to get out. So we're going to have to figure out new political arrangements that can contain these threats to liberalism and democracy. And we have to get very serious about that. I think we're going to have lots of uncomfortable conversations about like what are the boundaries of public and private power in the future. I think there's a sort of a doctrinaire take that a lot of us have. I would call myself a former neoliberal. So, I mean, I read Milton Friedman and and
Right.
Hayek and The Road to Serfdom. And I'm like,
Oh yeah, I've got it
I'm
here. I've got the road
yeah,
to serfdom here
yeah,
somewhere.
yeah. Look, look, and I'm like certainly familiar, right, with
Right.
all of the failings of sort of, thinking, the the Hayek's pretense of knowledge, right? These are all like epistemically sound critiques of 20th century socialist thinking of planned economies. Like, we know that's all bullshit, right? A lot of the reforms that happened in the 1980s were necessary. We did, there was a lot of like really dumb stuff that happened during the New Deal, like the National Recovery Administration, price fixing, regulating the price of haircuts at barber shops and stuff that actually happened, under FDR. And I agree that that was all like regulatory excess, and to the extent that like neoliberals made arguments against things like that, about how that just like undermined the efficient allocation of resources, that's all fine. But I think there's this argument around the nature of power that liberals like really need to think about. Like, where does power come from? Like, what is power? Like, how does influence work in society? I do think that people both on the far left and the far right actually tend to have a better intuitive understanding about like what power actually is than people in the center left and center right do, who
Yeah,
tend
because
to
they
sort.
typically don't have it.
Yeah, exactly. And so we're in this hangover, we're in this institutionalist, proceduralist hangover, right, of the liberal center. Um, and look, I mean, proceduralism and technocracy are, they're not like good or bad. It depends on like what what normative arrangements they're upholding. But the truth is, and we should acknowledge this, is that like we created a stratified society, right? We created a the right wing reactionaries called people like me like an out of touch coastal elite. They're not like completely wrong in that criticism. I think of myself as somebody who does genuinely believe in the liberal idea. But like, yeah, the political economic arrangements in this country today have left a lot of people feeling like they have no opportunity to get ahead, especially younger people. I mean, the housing crisis in this country is like fucking insane, and that's complicated, and it has to do with local planning. Leftists are as responsible for that as rightists. But we don't have these conversations anymore, and that's like that is itself part of the crisis, what I call like this epistemic crisis that liberals need to get a hold of, which is that we need to find a way to connect people back to real discussions about real issues, and have a vision, an actual articulable, operable vision that we can use to fight back against this bullshit, because we're currently drowning in it.
Well, I mean, there's a lot there. So let me go through things. So you live in Los Angeles, right?
Yeah.
But you don't live in Norco, right? And if you've ever been to Norco, right? First of all, it's north of Corona, right? It's usually the town that I use as an example of what a town that is too often forgotten by coastal elites or people like you and me that have the opportunity to sit here on Substack and have a pretty thoughtful and philosophical conversation, right?
Yeah.
Folks in Norco are getting up to go to work,
Yeah.
and it could be that they have an hour and a half commute ahead of them, right? It's on top of everything else. Um, I think that on the neoliberal front, yes, it was ridiculous to regulate a haircut. But the answer to getting rid of the regulation on the haircut was not to get rid of every rule that was ever invented to
Absolutely.
keep people who were otherwise rapacious somewhat in line. And I say this, one thing I wanted to go back to, you talked about the Gilded Age. Before even World War One, the response to the Gilded Age was the Progressive Era,
Yep.
right? Which, the likes of which Teddy Roosevelt, the Sherman Antitrust Act. And now what's interesting, Mike, I'd love to get your take on this, is that you see that there are a lot of people who consider themselves liberals who, when you start talking about the necessity of breaking up monopoly power, are sort of like, you can't do that.
Yeah.
we're a market-based economy. And I'm like, well, and to go back to the central planning thing as well, my friend Grace Blakely over in the UK, her great book is called Vulture Capitalism. She makes the argument, I think, in a pretty compelling way that, yes, okay, it's not a government planned economy, but it is still centrally planned by very, very large going concerns for whom the planning is now done through campaign
Yeah.
contributions, lobbying, policy prescriptions that allow them to plan for what they want, even if it's not necessarily the government doing it. The government is acquiescing to that power,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. So, I mean, the way I look at this, sort of like, like more like philosophically and morally, is there's this phenomenon in liberalism. It's a pathology of liberal thought. This concept of what some people might call hyper neoliberalism or market fundamentalism. It's very much exemplified in libertarian politics, and in terms of the thoughts of someone like Murray Rothbard, or more contemporaneously, like Hans Hermann Hoppe, like these crazy figures, or Peter Thiel, quite frankly. This sort of idea that the market has sort of like the unregulated market is like has obviously like proven its moral worth. It's like lifted people out of poverty. Like the only real problem is like a government getting in the way. This is a very, very confused like stance, right? Like, I mean, markets have proven their worth in terms of allowing for productive and generative competition. Like America is a testament to that. I mean, I think Silicon Valley is a testament to that. But I think there's this moral mistake that a lot of political thinkers sort of make there, in not understanding that, it's got, back to like Aristotle, and like talking about like telos, or we get
Hmm.
come forward to Hume and the Azot distinction, but that there are things, there are things that we can do, but like but like we can build things, we can build rocket ships, we can send them to Mars, we can send probes into deep space, but the question is always like, why are we doing those things? Like, what are the values that motivate us to move, right? And markets don't, and libertarian thinkers, free market thinkers have an answer to this. They think that you know it's through the vote of our dollars, through how we spend our money. Like this is the sort of the thought behind like Citizens United, the Citizens United decision, right? That spending money is like a form of speech. I think this is like one of like the most insane moral confusions in liberal thought, that has like ever existed. Because there is certainly power tied up, right, in someone's ability to exert like economic influence on society around them. And that influence does not always nexus back with liberal values. I mean, China is an example of this. Like, we basically, you know, Deng Xiaoping like read Milton Friedman and took some great ideas there, and then founded, the new special administrative region in Shenzhen, which is now the world's largest manufacturing supercluster. Um, and it turns out that markets can be wielded by authoritarians and kleptocrats in the same way that they can be wielded by a liberal democracy. But like the truth is that like the values that are inputs into those markets are pre-economic. These are pre-economic arguments. Our founders understood this. That's why we have a commerce clause. I mean, they lived through the British East India Company. They knew that like they knew that like markets were not like good unto themselves, right? That they had to serve some higher purpose, right? Like,
Even a guy named Adam Smith understood that.
yes, absolutely. So market fundamentalism is one of liberalism's like greatest intellectual errors, coming out of the 20th century. And it still persists. It's very I mean, it's a resurgent idea. If you follow crypto people on Twitter, Bitcoin people, I mean, they're all like re-enmeshed in these these ideas, which I think is actually the idea, the liberal idea, sort of devolved into what I might call a pathology, a moral pathology. Um, it's very obvious that we should not do this. That we should contain the excesses of markets when they lead us towards antisocial, illiberal, and anti-democratic places. And we built a country that, around. I mean, ultimately, I mean, Jefferson was he was sort of a he was sort of politicizing, Locke's social contract theory, right?
Yeah.
And
But he traded happiness for property,
yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. And so we really need to kind of get back to those sort of like that sort of like those core ideas, and recognize that, yes, markets are better ways of organizing economic activity for very obvious reasons, right? Like nobody has no like we're all limited in the knowledge that we all have about each other, right? So we can get into all these like fancy conversations. We can bring up like Bastiat and like the seen and the unseen, and or Mises like economic calculation problem. Like these are important like perspectives on the problem of any one person or group of people trying to organize economic life on behalf of everyone else, because no one can aggregate everyone else's preferences and know what everyone. You don't know that I'm going to need cough medicine for my child this afternoon. So
Well, you
market.
might
Well,
if you get an ad for cough medicine today, you'll
well,
know.
exactly. But that's the point, right? That's like where the nuance comes out, right? This war for our attention that capitalism has become is dangerous. I don't believe democracy can survive on this path. And there's an uncomfortable conversation that liberals have to have there, because it comes up against like commitments around, freedom of speech, which I'm very committed to. But I mean, it's like but what is the basis upon which we have speech? How are we communicating? If our communication is completely moderated and mediated by oligarchical control through algorithms, through AI, what I see is controlled. When I open my phone, the first thing that I see is what an algorithm has chosen for me. How free truly is my speech? How free is my thought? And I think we all have this instinct that we can that we can maintain our intellectual and moral independence in the face of this onslaught. And we just know that's not true. The science tells us it's not true. Neuroscience tells us it's not true. Philosophers understand this is not true. There's a in cognitive science, there's something called the availability heuristic, right? Like we only know what we see, right? So if you can control what people see, then you can control their thoughts. And that is like where our capitalist economy has gotten to. It's become an attention war. It's become an attention economy. It's turning into an intimacy economy now with AI chatbots that people are forming emotional relationships with. That's
But it's
scary.
faux intimacy, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's the whole point. Well, actually, let me back up again, not to get too philosophical, although maybe we're here already. Mike, is that like if I'm having an intimate conversation with a chatbot, right? Any more than I'd be having an intimate conversation with somebody in a chat room. Is it any more or less real to me in that moment? Right. And I
Yeah.
think that's the other part, is that like we're trading. And this is why I'm such an evangelist for people actually getting in person together in 3 dimensions, is that these parasocial relationships that you're referring to are taking up more and more of our time, literally our time, and our bandwidth, emotionally, psychologically, and every other thing. And it's fundamentally unhealthy. And I think, were you the one that wrote the piece about understanding like how we're giving social media to our kids and we're teaching them the bad lessons, right? Like we're guilty of it too, right? Like
Yeah.
I sit there, like I got 20 extra minutes. Yeah, I'll scroll through Instagram Reels or I'll look at TikTok and like 20, if I set a 20-minute timer, I wouldn't even notice that time had gone. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I mean, I was a total, like, Twitter addict, like, years ago.
Sure. We all
Today.
were. Well,
Yeah.
not everybody here, but I was and you were.
Yeah, yeah, like, I was. I mean, I try to, I engage in my own, like, I meditate a lot, like,
Mm.
personally, like, and engage in sort of strategic boredom with myself. I think it's, like, really important and healthy.
That's what I'm going to start calling
Um
my afternoon nap, strategic boredom.
Yeah, yeah. But I think, yeah, but and for those of you who haven't heard this term before, like parasocial, which I've been I've been talking about like quite a bit in my commentary. That just means that like when somebody like we've always had these parasocial relationships throughout our entire lives within mass media. Like if you like are a fan of like of a music star, right? If you're like a Taylor Swift super fan, that's a parasocial relationship. You have a parasocial relationship with Taylor Swift. You know her, but she doesn't know you. She has a relationship with, and social media has created this influencer culture, which has like created this parasocial phenomenon, which is very confusing to our brains, right? Like we weren't evolved to like have one-way relationships like this. People becoming emotionally invested in someone like Alex Jones. I don't know how that happens, but they do. And this
Because
is really
we've
fucked
always
up our
loved conspiracy
society.
theories. We've always
Yeah.
loved conspiracy theories. In fact, I'm listening to a book about Iran of all things right now, up until when the Shah fell and Ayatollah Khomeini came in. And the Iranian people back then were like loved conspiracy theories too. If there was a conspiracy theory to be had about why something had happened, they were likely to jump on it. And Americans are exactly the same way.
Absolutely. Well, we should talk, and the reason why, like, people are so susceptible to conspiracy theories today is because, to, to, to most people, when you talk, one of the things that I've like noticed, I'm not trying to like toot my own horn, but I notice a lot of people who discover my writing, and if you look, through my comments and in some of the private feedback I get, which I think is really validates this is, people will say like, I knew this was happening, but I didn't have the words to describe it.
Hmm.
Um, and so like, thank you for like, explaining something to me that like I just couldn't put the words on. This is like the other side of what like say someone like Steve Bannon sort of implicitly understands and like what he's like trying to do, and he says he wants to flood the zone with shit, is when people are confused, it's easier to capture them with conspiratorial thinking because our brains are rationalization devices. Like if we fill in gaps. Like we want to understand the world around us. And so one of the things that's, this is about like having a revanchist liberalism and how we're going to succeed is like we need as liberals in order to fight this is to tell better stories. Like we need to get out of this mode of being on the defensive, engaging in this like analytical detached reasoning, explaining to people how institutions are supposed to work. No one fucking cares about that. I mean, I care about it. Obviously, we should care about that.
Well,
We
they
should,
care about it
but
because for too many people, they're not working.
exactly.
You
But
don't
yeah,
care
like
about the institution so long as it's doing what it's supposed to do for you, theoretically. And then when it doesn't, you care a lot about it. But that emotion tends to anger, frustration, whatever it might be.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I mean, people are. I mean, you see. I mean, by the way, I mean, I'm impressed now with like what Gavin Newsom is doing. I mean, that's a kind of a that is kind of the energy that I've been kind of talking about for a while, right? I mean, this is what liberals need to do. They need to like feel confident in their ideas and attack, right? In the political realm, and don't apologize for what you believe. No one should like apologize for what they earnestly believe in, right? I mean, and ever we should, all of us hopefully be willing to be proven wrong if better arguments are presented against us. But it needs to be understood that the fascists are lying. They know they're lying. They're lying on purpose. Like if you've seen the lawsuits against like Fox News and the leaks of the emails, like Tucker Carlson knew he was lying. We've seen his emails. He lies on purpose. He knows that like what he is doing is manipulating public opinion to steer them towards a political arrangement that for whatever reason he's convinced himself will be better for him. Maybe he thinks it'll be better for the world, but like they're not telling the truth. And so liberals need to start from the basic premise that like liberal values are good, defensible. They built this country. Our proudest moments, the things we celebrate in this country, the everything from like the civil rights movement, right? To women's suffrage, all of these advancements, the liberal idea sort of like resolving the contradictions in our society slowly and moving ever towards a more perfect union, right? Like talking like that, talking about about our progress and being proud of our progress and the capacity we have for progress because of liberal institutions. Like that is something that liberals have just like they got really bad at. In fact, like this is where I agree with I don't agree with the reactionary right, of course, but like this sort of like self flagellation that liberals got themselves to, where we used to continuously reckon with our history and beat ourselves up about like the original sin of slavery. Like and I want to be careful here because I don't want to play into these like motherfuckers on the right who are like gonna you got Trump talking about removing slavery exhibits at the Smithsonian. Like fuck that. I mean, we need to be very honest about our history. This country had this we had slavery in this country. That was very bad, but we can be proud about the fact that we ended it and that we made and that overcoming slavery is part of our legacy. It is the progress. I mean, that it is the progress that that our constitutional liberal values point us towards and allow us to achieve, that liberals need to re-embrace again and wrap the flag around again. And don't like we need to end this self-flagellation. One, it doesn't work, it doesn't inspire anybody, and it just provides fuel for what we're now seeing on the right. So like the answer for revanchist liberalism isn't really that hard. It's just to stop being afraid of our own shadow and start being proud of the shoulders that we're standing on, the history that we're standing on, the history of progress, the march towards justice, and like that to me is is where we need to get. It is a mindset shift, and you can see it. Like the fact that Gavin Newsom, who's like I don't know, his like approval was like down at like I don't know 31% approval in California. Now he's like punching back and showing some confidence, and he's like up to like what like 57% approval in California. It really is that simple, guys. We need to get rid of like these technocratic centrists, that still haven't figured it out in the Democratic Party, and get some fighters in there. And you're going to see Americans are going to wake up. They want a positive vision. They want to feel proud of their country, and a positive revanchist liberal vision. I promise you are going to bring a lot of people off of the sidelines. You're going to have a lot of people who did in the same way that Trump brought a lot of people off the sidelines in like 2016 and like 2020, people who don't typically vote. There's a lot of people out there that don't typically vote, that are politically disengaged, that are waiting for something like that that's like more tied to like liberal values. So I think we need to be more patriotic. We need to be more proud of the tradition of liberalism, and we need to be more confident that liberal solutions in the future will deliver more of the progress, just like it did for over 2 centuries.
So, let me. There's a lot to break down there, but let me first talk about Newsom and the concept of fighting back, and we're seeing this with the tweets and the memes and everything else. So, as someone who spent a long time fighting Donald Trump, let me give everybody a little idea here. So, if you've got Donald Trump on the hook, right, and the flywheel is spinning, you must keep after it, right? This
Yes.
is one thing where you must keep doing it. And you must keep doing it, and you must go to places where you might not otherwise feel comfortable, right? Like we at the Lincoln Project got Donald Trump's campaign manager fired, right? Because of an ad we ran, because he knew he was getting ripped off, right? We would go after Jared and Ivanka because we knew that when Ivanka worked in the West Wing, if she saw something we'd done, she'd run down the hall to her and say, Daddy, look what they just said about me. And he'd go crazy, right? Now, a lot of that is fun and it made a lot of people happy and it kept him distracted. But remember that you have to keep after it. And remember that these are not good people. They will come for you as they came for us. And I'm not
Mhm.
saying you shouldn't do it. I'm just saying that be prepared for what will happen, which is this guy is at the pinnacle of his power. He now feels invulnerable, although he's unhappy and his numbers are down. But this is the other part. He is not up for reelection. At least he isn't
Well,
constitutionally. He
well,
might be
well,
in
we'll
his
see
he
about
might be
that.
right. He might be in his own mind. But look, Mike, if we get to that point, everything else is off the table. So like it's not like we could talk about
We
that
might
for
already
years.
be at that point, not like really be like willing
We
to like
might be.
admit it to ourselves.
Right, we might be, but my point is this, is like the fight against a guy like this is all day, every day. The fight against a guy like this is when he mentions your name on Twitter or on Truth Social, and you're not Gavin Newsom, but you're the social media maven, right? Or you're the press secretary or whatever. And all of a sudden, your comments are filled with ugliness and hatred, or someone, drops a noose on your doorstep or doxes you, right? Like that's when you'll know you're in the fight. And the question you'll then have to ask yourself is like, are you prepared? Because it doesn't get easier against
No,
someone like this. It
no.
only gets harder. And the better you are at it, the more angry they get, right? And so not saying anyone should stop. And Mike, I agree with you. But what we have to do, to your point then, is say, okay, if it's going to be Newsom, fine. But everybody's got to fall in line and everybody's got to keep up. You got to have a sword in this hand and a shield in this hand and know which one is which and why you have to use each of them and be willing to use the sword when that's the right option.
Yeah,
Right. But guys,
I'm not
right.
saying
Go
it's
ahead.
going to be Newsom, by the way. I'm not like
No, I
endorsing
got you.
him or
No,
yeah,
I got you. No, I got you.
but I would say I hope many Democrats in the field like declare for 2028. But I would suggest that they take very careful notes about what Newsom is doing and be more like that. Right? I mean that is what I am saying.
So let me ask you this, because I want to separate liberal, either small L or big L liberal, from big D Democrat.
Yeah.
Which is how how can Democrats, I have my own opinions, but I want to hear yours. How do Democrats demonstrate that small L liberalism in a way that doesn't just come off as what I think it is, which is, well, we've been out of power, we're upset about it, we want to be back in power because we're better,
Well, do you know
right?
what
We're not going to explain to you why we're better. You just have to assume that we're better. You have to accept that we're better, because that's been my frustration, Mike, is like, it's not enough to say Donald Trump is bad. Got it. Right. But what are you going to do? Back to that positive vision you mentioned.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's a good question. I mean, look, I mean, I think that there's a lot of amazing things happening out there, right? We have, we're having amazing breakthroughs in medical science with, like potential like cures for cancer with like protein folding research, like the stuff that's like happened with like AlphaFold at Google. I mean, some of these things are scary too. I mean, there's these dual purpose things. We often focus on the civilization ending potential of these like technologies, but liberals I think need to like start looking at a lot of this like technological progress and start thinking about like coming up with visions, articulable visions, doable visions, about how we're going to fix, like how we're going to improve people's lives, and we're going to make like make these possibilities um like real in the real world. And I think, we can I want to write more about this. I'm actually quite excited about like a lot of the breakthroughs that are happening today that almost no one's talking about, which are kind of weirdly being, not weirdly, but like sinisterly being undermined by
Mhm.
the attack on science in this country right now. But I think liberalism needs to um look at those sorts of things and start like having I also think too, I mean, like when you look at polls too, like this is another crazy thing that makes me really, really angry, right? Like is that when you look at Gallup issue polling or Pew and you like get a broad cross section of like where Americans are on like policy matters, like look, most Americans think the rich should probably pay some more in taxes. Most Americans think that like we should probably like have some kind of universal like provision for healthcare in this country. These are not like even pluralities of Republicans believe this. You see things like 30-40% of Republicans believe this. And the fact that like it's impossible to like bring these policy proposals into the conversation without somebody saying that's like far left or like radical when like 60-70% of Americans indicate to pollsters that they support these policies, that doesn't seem very radical. These things seem like massively mainstream positions. um, and I think that's like maybe one of the reasons why why the progressive left is going to could potentially break through in a big way. And and I obviously have my like critiques about like the excesses that they might engage in. But I mean like if they do break through, it won't be surprising because most Americans don't want to like fear bankruptcy because their kid got cancer, right? Like we're like the only developed nation where that's like the case. Um and I think that liberals just need to be more brave about like talking about things like that and not like get afraid when like the right says, "Well, you're unelectable." Like we need a moderate who doesn't
It's the
talk
right.
about things
That's
like
not
that.
just the right, though.
Yeah.
I mean, you could see on Substack right now, and I speaking of revanchism, there has been, I think, a lot of revanchist sort of attitude from centrist Democrats right now against the left, against the progressive left right now. And I have my own theories about like the last gasp of neoliberalism and market supremacy and all this stuff that you're talking about. But you can see that like that establishment left is that establishment Democratic wing, of whom I have many, many friends and I've done a lot of work, like they are not letting go easily. And I think that, for me, I'm like, I want to get your opinion. I'm going to posit something here. So let's take New York City.
Yeah.
You could say, okay, we shouldn't expand that out because it's New York City, right? But if we're talking about the Democratic Party, it's actually a pretty good microcosm because it's nearly all Democrats certainly all Democrats that vote in the primary. But for me, what has been interesting has been the almost reactionary response from the establishment left about a guy like Mamdani, right? And now and they were willing to put up a guy like Andrew Cuomo. One, never been a New Yorker. Two, he was like a Me Too poster child, and now he's okay. Three, just now, earlier this week, it was reported he was out in the Hamptons, okay, doing a fundraiser saying, Donald Trump said he's going to
Yep.
be willing to help me out. So here's my question: is like going back to my question about power and your inference of power is, do you want your guy or do you want democracy? Because democracy doesn't necessarily mean you get your guy. It means you get to
Yeah.
vote for your guy. And it might be that your guy or gal loses. But if you're willing to go that next step and say, I'm willing to be in league with the likes of Andrew Cuomo and Donald Trump because I don't like that guy, it's hard to call yourself a small L liberal or a small D Democrat because now it's just about power. Now it's
Yeah.
just about, I want my guy. And if I can't have my guy, you can't either.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, two things come to mind there, right? And I think Mom Dami is I'm in the camp, right? I mean, I I've spoken about what I think about him. I mean, I think the government run grocery stores is a silly idea. But if I was a New Yorker, I wouldn't have any in this context. I wouldn't have any trouble voting for him. Actually, it's
Right.
it's interesting. It's interesting if the centrist neoliberals that are trying to prevent this sort of regression into leftist anti-market sentiment were serious, they would look at this situation with Cuomo and maybe think to themselves like this is giving sort of like capitalism and centrism a bad name. Like if this is what the center is willing to do, it's willing to back someone like Cuomo, who is going to invite the help of Trump, to defeat Mondami, who's, I mean, we can critique his solutions, and I will, but I will mention that this guy seems pretty flexible. I mean, he's like trying to meet with like Jamie Dimon and stuff. I mean, like he does seem to be willing to like reach out, to other people in different ideological places, and he does seem to be trying to find common ground. I mean that make his heart is in the right place, and I know that everyone can say that like the road to hell is is paved with good intentions and all of that,
But
but like
what road is paved with bad intentions?
but
Like, where
one
does that
road
one
is
go?
paved,
Because that doesn't go to heaven.
but that road, but
right?
the road, but we are on a road paved with bad intentions, exactly. And it's
Right.
like if I'm forced to, if I would much rather have somebody whose heart is in the right place, in an office of public trust, than one that is defending the status, a corrupt status quo. And we have a corrupt status quo. Like, this cannot go on. Most
Right.
Americans don't want this to go on. Have you seen what most Americans think about our political class right now? They don't like it. We can't just keep wagging our finger at them and saying, hey, like, like the liberal establishment like knows what's best for you. It's like, no, they want to see a political class that is responsive to the things that they care about. And we have gotten so far away from that, that like we can't honestly claim to be we can't honestly claim to be good stewards of the public trust if we're not listening to what the public is telling us. And what the public is telling us right now is that we have governments that are unresponsive to to what people want. People know what people want. There's common knowledge about the fact that people want better health care, that they want better jobs, that they want more economic security, that they want more physical security. There's criticisms that kind of come down on both sides of the aisle here. But like, if the center doesn't want to engage on those things, and they want to like line up behind Cuomo rather than engage with the guy who's actually like saying what everyone is thinking, that it's too fucking expensive to like live in New York City, or it's too expensive to live in America's cities where most of the economic opportunity is. So we've like raised the drawbridge, for people who want to like move to the city and pursue their dreams. If no one is willing in the center to tell that story, but just to say like, this is just the way things are, guys, like this is really complicated, like here's a policy paper on like housing that like hopefully we can get people to buy into, but probably won't, and we'll just keep going like this, day after day, week after week, month after month. It's like I like, what do they expect to happen? You're going to get someone like
Right.
Mamdani eventually, and people are going to fucking overthrow the establishment, and that's what we're seeing happening now, I think, in the Democratic Party.
You get someone like Trump who overthrows the establishment, because
Yes.
enough people are like, if I have to, I mean, let me go back. Was it 9 years? It's hard to believe this, Mike. I was convinced, right, that Hillary Clinton was going to beat Donald Trump, as I think most
I
people
was
were.
too, actually. I mean,
So convinced. I was convinced she was going to win 340 electoral votes, and they were going to call it by 9 p.m. Eastern. Like, that's how out of whack my like confirmation bias was. And then after the fact, right, and hindsight is 2020, all that is one, right? Half the country for Hillary, she was mythological, right? But for
mhm.
Republicans, right, they had disliked her for the better part of 20 years. So to me, when I saw that there were people like, you know what, like, I don't care. Like, maybe I'm not going to vote for Trump, but I'm not going to vote for her. Right. And then you get into all the campaign tactics and strategy, but everything else. But what was America trying to tell us that we weren't listening to was, we don't want more of that. Right.
Mhm.
We've had that for a long, long time. Right. We don't want more of it. And if my choices are somebody that I know, but I don't like or trust, or someone I only know in a parasocial way, right, that we talked
Yeah.
about earlier, but is willing to say, I'll change, I'll make change, even if that means taking a blowtorch to the thing. Well, I'll take a flyer on him because this ain't working for me. And that only gets worse, to your point, if the people who have the money, the wherewithal, and the power keep it up, because you'll get something worse than Trump.
Yeah.
Right. You won't get something better. We should get out of this idea that it's a pendulum or the arc of history bends towards justice. Right. Like the pendulum, you could snip at any time and it goes whoop, right off
Yeah.
into the ether.
Yeah. I mean, the defense, I mean, yeah, I agree with all of that. And I had much the same, I had much the same instincts about what I thought was going to happen. Like the election of Donald Trump in 2016 was quite a surprise to me, as it was to others, even though, like, actually by the end I thought he was like probably going to win. I was pretty scared of that, but um I think like if we look to history, just our own political history, right, it actually has been like, I mean, Bill Clinton, right, in the early 90s. I mean, he went out. He actually disrupted the establishment of the time. He was an insurgent, essentially. I mean, he brought in this new sort of neoliberal center, which kind of overthrew what was very much at the time a very progressive leftist establishment. And he ended up being one of the most popular presidents, like, So I mean, I don't think that
Left
there was
office with a 66% approval
yeah,
rating, which is
yeah,
unimaginable today.
but he overthrew the existing establishment, in his run, and so did Obama, quite frankly, in 2008. So we could just look to history and see that, like, you need to you sometimes need to overthrow the establishment if you want to actually inspire people. And this idea of overthrowing the establishment has actually been something that we've lived through many times. Reagan overthrew in many ways the Republican establishment of the time, that we
And
like.
the New Deal establishment, the New
Yeah,
Deal
so
the beginning of the end was Carter, but it accelerated through Reagan and then really took off under Clinton.
yeah, so these sort of like these we need from time to time to clear the tables, to allow for a new generation and new ideas to come in, for new positive visions to establish themselves, and give people a sense that politics is responding. It's responding to society. It's responding to culture. It's responding to technological progress. It's responding to what people want. When you get into this notion that we have this stable status quo of like experts that, like, I don't want to like over attack like the value of expertise. Like, I certainly trust a heart surgeon more than like RFK
Right.
Jr. To tell
Oh,
me what's wrong
really?
with my heart.
Now, Mike,
But like,
that is a wild take. Get out of here with that.
but I mean, like, the idea that like that there's like political experts or policy experts that like that we should that we should allow to sort of like ossify into place. I mean, I wrote a piece recently
Should
saying
not.
that there's no such thing as an expert on human civilization. We're all living in a machine that's kind of in a constant state of becoming. Nobody really knows how it works. We need constant new ideas. Dynamism is how complex adaptive systems like society thrive. It's not through ossification and through sclerosis, which is like where the Democratic Party is today. It needs new ideas. And honestly, if it takes even a guy like Mondami, who has economic ideas that I think is silly, to shake things up, then like at some level, I'm all for it.
So, it's interesting you say that. So, like, just in my experience, right, and in all of our experiences, especially in the political realm, if you work on a presidential campaign, especially at a high level, right, you get invited to Harvard, big corporations invite you to have very senior jobs, all this other stuff. If you really understand how this works, like, campaigns matter on the margins, right? If you had
Yeah.
been hit by a bus on the way to work one day, like, Barack Obama was still going to be president, right? Flip side, if you lose a presidential election, you're the biggest moron that ever lived. And how could you have possibly ever had that job? Right.
Yeah.
When the truth is that, like, we're the same middle-aged white guy for the most part. Right. Like, we've been doing this a long time. We have a sense of things. But really, for the most part, in presidential campaigns, yes, you can have a strategy, but so much of it's about the candidate themselves. And a lot of people are tacticians, though they call themselves strategists. But to your point about the new ideas here, as we start to wrap at the hour, is again, as we saw in 2024, it can't just be that Trump is bad. That's not going to do it. People
Although,
either know it
although,
or they don't
although,
care
although Trump is
or
very
they don't believe
bad.
it. Yes.
He is very bad, and I think Americans know that. Actually, I will say one thing about this sort of revanchist stance. I do think we have to stand up for truth and justice. I do think Democrats I need to be very, very serious about the fact that what we are seeing happening in Washington D.C., this literal, we're literally seeing highway robbery of our country. Like our futures are being stolen from us. Pockets are being lined, bribes are being paid in front of us. We cannot stand for this. Like, on one hand, we have to have a positive vision, but we also have to promise justice. Like the rule of law is a liberal value. The value that like all of us are equal before that law, that nobody is above the law, that we are a nation of laws, not of men or women. And that like we're simply not going to let this pass. That there will need to be a reckoning. Hey, and we should actually say this. The CEOs out there, like you like motherfuckers who are like going and paying fucking tribute in this like gold adorned, disgusting, vulgar fucking like Oval Office that Donald Trump has now created for himself. Like we are watching you, and like we are going to investigate you, and we're going to pull you before here. You're going to get subpoenas. Like, I mean, I think Tim Cook should be like fucking dragged before Congress when the Democrats take power, and he should be fucking asked, like, what did you get in exchange for that gold fucking bar that you gave to Donald Trump? And like, I do think that like this lack of that kind of energy is actually a real risk, because the Democratic Party, if they were smart, would be scaring the business community about the retribution that's going to come to them for participating in this fascist takeover and paying tribute. And I think if they were doing more of that, a lot of them might be a little bit more scared about working with Donald Trump, worrying that the Democrats were going to win the election and come after them. The fact that they're quiet on those things is actually harmful to the maintenance of the supremacy of the rule of law in our society. And I do think the
Democrats don't care. Like if you live inside the Beltway, you don't care. You're like, I got a PR firm, I got a public affairs firm, I got to work with everybody, I got to work with left and right. I saw this last November when I was in DC before Thanksgiving. All the people I was having dinner with, like, it didn't matter if they were in a left firm or right firm. They were all like, okay, well, Donald Trump's president now. How do I get right with the world? It wasn't like, oh, I have to stand up, because it's a business, just like Hollywood's a business or Silicon Valley's a business. But let me just say this. I mean, I was, and we're going to go a few minutes over, so I'm sorry.
Okay, it's all right.
Now the coffee is kicked in.
I'm all good. I'm good. I'm not in a rush. So
I had a conversation with a big Democratic donor a few months ago, and they were asking me about how I felt about the Democratic Party, and I sort of went through my thing. Now, look, I preface this by saying my old party should be burned to the ground with a blowtorch, the ashes collected and thrown into the sea. Okay, so let me just preface it by that. But he said, you seem like you have a lot of bile for the Democratic Party, and I said, I'll tell you why. Because I'm disappointed. I thought that it was better. I thought it was better than my old party. And in a lot of ways it is, but it's not better enough, right? Trump can make these accusations about how everybody's the same or there's a uniparty, because there is plenty of truth in that, right? Like I saw somebody the other night, or a clip of somebody saying, look, we're now full on into crony capitalism. No. We've been in crony capitalist government for a long, long time. The difference was it was lobbying, campaign contributions, and everything else, and maybe some bribes down the line. Now it's just out in the open with threats and cash, right? But like the system does not work for the individual man or woman in America. It works for a very powerful set of interests. And there are too many establishment Democrats, again, who I'm friends with, for whom that is their bread and butter, right? They are not in it for the right reasons. They're not in it for the rule of law or small L liberalism. They're in it because this is their chosen field. This is the business they've chosen. And if this is what they got to do to be successful, that's what they'll do. And I think until and unless, to your point about the establishment, especially of the Democratic Party, which does not want to let go, which has its vestiges going back to Bill Clinton and to Barack Obama, right? Like that needs to say, okay, thank you for your service, right? It is
Yeah, it's
now
run its
time for
course.
us to time to look forward. And until and unless you're going to do that, there are too many people, especially people who should vote for Democrats, are going to say, I got three choices. I got the Republicans, I got the Democrats, and I got the couch. Never going to vote for the Republicans. The Democrats are still leaving me behind. The couch has got my vote. And that's what we saw last year.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
how do we scare? I mean, is it fear? Most people respond to fear more than anything, right? Is it going to your point, is it going to be like, look, we're coming for all of you, right? Like you need to do better. As I've said, guys, if Democrats want to be the white hats, you got to be the white hats. You got to be
yes.
better and you got to demand better. It can't just be we're 8% better than those assholes.
Yeah, I mean, it does need to be like, I mean, I've said this before. I mean, I think a successful candidate, if you want to win power in this country, I think a powerful message is to one, stand on truth, but to point to. I mean, can I just like say like when fucking like Democratic leadership in Congress is calling the deployment of military and mass thugs to the streets of Washington D.C. a distraction. Like I don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Like this is a very serious projection of
The
state
state
power,
authority. Yep.
of state authority. Like I mean, sure it has like sure it's spectacle, right? It is in a sense a form of distraction, but like so, I mean, but dropping a bomb on a city could be called a distraction in some sense too. But it's very serious, and people die. Like I am a successful candidate on the left is not going to turn away from the reality that Washington has become corrupt, that it is infested with corrupt entrenched interests, and yeah, like we need an honest uh, we like an honest take on this, that that the Democratic Party has been captured, the Republican Party has been captured, that there are a lot of people who are on the take, who are breaking laws, that are not serving the public interest, and we are coming for you. We are going to investigate you. People are going to go to fucking jail. And honestly, if Donald Trump abuses the pardon power, to try and like get everyone off in the end, like as they're leaving office, then I don't know, then maybe we'll fucking join the ICC and ship you all over to the fucking Hague. I mean, at the end of the day, like we're very fucking serious about like actually like restoring justice to this country. I think if you say something like that, like most Americans are going to be like, fucking yeah, like yeah, I agree. I mean, Republican, like I mean, and just to have the bravery to just like actually speak some truth to fucking power.
When you're pushing an open door, people believe it anyway,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
I mean, if you
Exactly.
go back to 2015 and 2016 and you listen, not watch, or you could watch, but listen or read a Bernie Sanders speech or a Donald Trump speech, with the exception of Trump's just ugliness and racism and everything else, right? Like the populism, especially the economic populism and the willingness to say the system is screwing you and we're brave
Yeah.
enough to say it, right? They almost matched up, right? They almost matched up with one another. And then what Trump brought in addition to that populism or that willingness to say you're getting screwed is that very innate feeling of being ostracized, right? Like it's a different level, but like he's a guy from Queens, he wants to be a guy from Manhattan, and the people from Manhattan are like, nope, can't join our club. Can't join our club.
Yeah,
And I think
exactly.
that's how a lot of Americans feel, regardless of color, creed, race, economics. They feel like it's not their country or the country isn't for them. Right. And to your point, like people already know, they're used to people lying to them. They're used to politicians lying to them. That's why the average STD is more popular than your average member of Congress, right? Because they know this stuff. And you go
Exactly.
back and you look at like a Ross Perot in 1992, right? Like he knew what was going on. He called all of this stuff to be a really nerdy person. If you go back and watch his infomercial, it was an actual infomercial on the economics of NAFTA. He called all of it.
Mhm.
He called every single bit of it, right? But George H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton were like, NAFTA, 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 right? And we see the downstream effects of that now 30 plus years later. All right, Mike, give us some wisdom. I've kept you too long. Give us some wisdom on
It's all right. It was fun.
revanchism, on being a liberal. Where can we find you? What do we need to do next?
Well, my number one advice, right, is well, can I say one thing? Someone mentioned El
You can say as
Salvador
many
before I
things
answer.
as you'd
Yeah,
like.
yeah. So this guy Bukele in El Salvador, like as part of this revanchism, like I say, you need to hold people accountable. Like I think whoever the candidate is for the Democratic Party, this is my advice to you, Gavin Newsom. I mean, that guy who's operating fucking gulags on behalf of this like fucking government and is like actually part of this global neo-reactionary movement. I mean, if we get power back in 2029, like we need to go after that motherfucker. We need to like put sanctions on that country and demand that motherfucker be handed over to us for like, to face trial in this
So
country.
you're
Yeah.
talking going
Yeah.
full Noriega.
Yeah,
You're
like
the
fuck,
full Noriega.
like fuck you, Bukele. Like operating like in prison camps. Like, and if you don't turn yourself over, we have a bunch of people stationed nearby in Panama that will
We do
come and
have
get.
an ugly
Will
history.
come
So
and
we've
come.
been there before.
I mean, but like I mean, I'm serious. I'm serious. Like there needs to like we need to like fucking bite back at this bullshit. These foreign countries that are actually helping destroy our democracy from the outside, we do not forget them. But to answer your question about what people should do, I mean, I think that look, the most important thing you can do is be a good person in your personal life. Like maintain your own personal integrity. Don't allow lies to creep into your life, into your business. Maintain professional integrity, professional ethics. Participate in your community, get involved in local politics. These things are like really, really important. These are the fabric of our society. Like we are we're supposed to be like a decentralized political society, a federalist system.
Right.
So it's very, very important for us to not fall into this trap of treating all politics as national. Robust local politics is actually the bedrock of resistance in this country. So like staying, staying staying like sane, maintaining your private life, not allowing them to steal joy, not allowing them to control you with fear, but to have confidence that like there's that you have like-minded people out there that are going to march forward and like together in the streets if necessary, and feeling inspired about that, inspired about the fact that like that there are people who care about this country and who want to save this country, and get yourself into that mindset and don't allow yourself to be pushed into despair, because that is where they want you. That is what you need to do. So like keep your sanity, keep your emotional health, keep your friends close, and also make new friends. Find people out there who share your values and form those relationships. It's very, very important. These are the core things that are necessary for effective resistance at a time when authoritarians are trying to consolidate control. And you can find me at my Substack notes from the circus, where I talk about this stuff all the time.
Right. And guys, let me just echo exactly what Mike said. I'm not going to repeat it word for word because I should, but I don't need to because he already said it. Listen, I am in my little town, in my little county, right? Like we are in hand-to-hand combat with our county council, right? All day, every day over a rapacious developer that has been working on something that we've held at bay for the better part of 5 years. And it's getting close. But you know what? Like it is amazing, even at that level, to see what will be done on behalf of the people, which is very little unless people stand up, and on behalf of the powerful, which is a lot. And you have to hold them to account. Also, as Mike talked about in your community, guys, what we're seeing where federal budget cuts are going to matter, it's going to be food banks. It's going to be shelters for battered women and children. All of these things. We need help. Look, guys, if you know someone, and it could be someone who's on some sort of assistance, right? I was reading this book the other day. There are a lot of federal programs for now that exist, but the problem isn't necessarily that the money isn't out there. It's that the people that need them don't either A, know it exists, or B, know how to get that help. If you know somebody in that position, go out and help them figure it out. I mean, look at this. They're making it harder for seniors to contact the Social Security Administration. If you know someone, if you hear of a friend or a family friend or a colleague or somebody who's having trouble like that, go help them. Coach a team. Join a bowling league. There was just a story out, Mike, that quote unquote old lady activities extend life. My friend Kat Abu-Ghazala, who's running for Congress in Illinois 9, she's 26. She has a knitting club, right? Like she and her friends get together and knit, right? Because that social muscle, it is a muscle. The more we use it, the stronger it gets. And the less we use it, the more it atrophies. And that's what they, and there is a they out there, want. They don't want us together. They don't want us believing we can get out of this. And never, ever forget, guys, that there is honor in the fight. There is honor in the struggle. And if we do this, it's not going to be fast and it's not going to be easy. And it's a lot of it, guys, is not going to be sexy, but it is doable. It took us a long time to get here. It's probably going to take us a long time to get out, but that doesn't mean we give up. That means that when we need to, we rest. When we need to, we step away from the fire hose, as Mike said. Guys, it's not your job to take the full brunt of this all day, every day, right? That's not your job. It's not my job. We have a lot of stuff we need to do, a lot of things we can do. Mike, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I cannot believe this has gone now almost an hour and 15 minutes, but I'm glad. I hope we can do it again soon.
Yeah, no, this is great. I was happy to do this. I agree with everything you say. Life is for living, everybody. Don't let them steal your joy. Thank you for having me, Reed.
No, thanks, everybody. Listen, go find Mike. Sign up for his Substack, sign up for my Substack, The Homefront. Guys, my latest podcast up with the inimitable Tom Nichols is up right now. You can find it on my feed. Everybody, thanks. I'm going to be on with Jessica Yellen, the also incredible Jessica Yellen, tomorrow, talking about what the F is happening. Mike, thanks so much for joining me.
That was great. Thank you, Reed.
Everybody else.
This was fantastic. Thank you.
We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.